setting the stage for your Georgia Saturday. This is DawgNation GameDay. Brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors, Kroger, and R.S. Andrews. Now live from Jittery Joe's in Athens, here's your host, Kaylee Mansell.
New game time, no problem. Get one last look at Sanford Stadium before Georgia goes on the road next week to Neyland Stadium for its first SEC matchup and first road game of the year. Dogs are back for the second week in a row, and so are we here on DawgNation GameDay. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Kaylee Mansell, and my spirits continue to be high, knowing that Georgia plays another game today. Breaking news this morning, obviously Georgia's game time moved up from 3:30 to 2:30 due to weather, so thank you so much for working with us. I know we usually start 2 hours before kickoff. Had to do a little Gunner Stockton scrambling around this morning, so just wanted to take the time to thank all of you for working with us and still being a part of the show with us here on DawgNation GameDay. Obviously, the goal of this show is to provide all the last-minute information you need before Georgia kicks off. I was pleasantly surprised with what we saw from Georgia in Game 1, even against an opponent like Marshall. I think they showed flashes of a lot of good things, but obviously with any game, any opportunity, there's always room for improvement, and now going forward, it's all about how do you build on that foundation. So that's what we're going to try to tackle today here on the show. Why don't we show you what we've got going on today's DawgNation Game Day. First, it's a new opportunity to learn more about this team. I feel like we got a glimpse of what that identity looks like, specifically in the youthful exuberance that Kirby Smart was talking about, but what can we continue to learn about them through Game 2? And then, of course, all eyes again will be on Gunner Stockton. Where can he show the most improvement without giving up the game plans for the future SEC schedule? Then Jeff Santel will join us to provide his evaluation of Gunner Stockton in Game 1, how he can move forward, and we'll continue the conversation of the 2025s who were so impressive last week, hoping to see more of them today. Then we'll take a look at Austin Peay, their impressive performance from last week and how the game plans for the future SEC schedule. Then Jeff Santel will join us to provide his evaluation of Gunner Stockton in Game 1, how he can move forward, and we'll continue the conversation of the 2025s who were so impressive last week, hoping to see more of them today. Then we'll take a look at Austin Peay, their impressive performance from last week and how mind that I would personally like to see get better out there today. Then Cody Chafin's joined us earlier this week for our Boots on the Ground segment, which is just some behind-the-scenes things you may have missed that are pretty telling and hopefully will give us a better glimpse into what we're going to see today. And then, of course, another look at the team with the Kroger Dog Walk. And we did something really special with Brandon Adams on DawgNation at Large on Thursday. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we get to the Kroger Dog Walk. But with it being Game 2, now there's a foundation that has been laid for what this Georgia team looks like. But even against an opponent like Austin Peay, there are always ways that you can go about improvement. So here are the things that we can hopefully learn today in seeing the Dogs in Game 2, starting with how much does the Georgia offense show? I think we saw last week that Gunner Stockton obviously can run the ball. Thought he spread the ball around to a few guys, but how much more do they have up their sleeve, particularly in Gunner's passing game? And what are we going to see from the performances of the other running backs? We know Gunner Stockton's got the run game going on, but what about the other guys that we've talked so much this offseason about? And then how do you continue to move forward in Week 2? Yes, it's an FCS opponent, but there's always means for improvement. I'd like to see a little bit more from the offensive line and a disruptive front seven against a run-heavy team that we're going to see in Austin Peay. So how do you progress within this second week? And then, who steps up? there were obvious ones last week. We were so impressed by Zachariah Branch. Dwight Phillips Jr., I feel like he just kind of rose from the ashes like a phoenix, and that was a guy that we talked so much about this week. If you would have told me that last Saturday when we did this show, I would have thought maybe something bad happened with the other running backs, but who are those guys that can really shine today, specifically those that we've spent so much time in the offseason talking about with a lot of hype? So I'm going to give you 3 names later for who I would like to see step up, but there are going to be some new stars that emerge today. But it all goes back to Gunner Stockton. I think most fans were pretty impressed with what they saw from Gunner in week 1. It was definitely an exciting feeling to see a Georgia quarterback who could run the ball. But like a quarterback coming out of week 1, there's always improvements to be made. So why don't we take a second and look back on Gunner's stats from last week. Now, big thing, he was Georgia's leading rusher, which in my mind was super impressive. In the passing game, 14 for 24 with 190 passing yards, 2 touchdowns to no interceptions, which is an impressive feat in itself. And then on the ground, 10 carries for 73 yards with 2 touchdowns. His PFF grade overall was an 80.8. The thing that I think concerned me a little bit was then you looked at the passing completion percentage. It was a little over 58%. Now with the run game, it's great that you have that option as a quarterback, and it definitely brings a different dynamic to this offense. But moving forward, I don't want to continue to see Gunner Stockton be the leading rusher, considering how many good running backs are in this room. Not super concerned with Gunner Stockton on the ground. I think he's shown a high IQ of when to run and when to give the ball up. But after today, I don't want to see him as the leading rusher. For me, where he can progress is in the passing game. He had that completion percentage of just 58%, with the total pass yards being slightly skewed due to Zach Branch's yards after catch. So I want to see him spread the ball out a little more and create explosive plays in the passing game. In fact, former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm spoke on this earlier this week. Here's Jake on how Gunner can improve in week 2.
Yeah, I think you could definitely make the argument there's room for improvement. I think there's room for improvement from everybody on the football team. From Gunner, specifically, I think you were talking about the yards per attempt. I mean, that kind of comes in big with explosive passes. I think being able to run the football well helps that with the play action passing game. And then having opportunities like Zachariah Branch did, right? You're throwing the swing pass out, and then he takes it to the house, for 50-plus yards. So being able to have those explosive guys, accuracy plays in a huge factor in that, and being able to place the ball exactly where you need to, right? We saw that clip from Arch Manning when he was playing Ohio State. I think it was a 3rd down, and he threw the ball behind his guy. If he puts it 1 foot in front of the numbers, that guy's taking off to the races, and that's a big play. So I think just moving forward, I think all those things will get better. I think there will be a guy slowly emerge as the go-to guy, but I was very, very pleased to see Zachariah Branch kind of do what we expected him to do, which is to be an explosive player for this offense.
And one thing to point out about what Jake said right there is that a lot of these things come with time and playing experience. It may not happen immediately, but at least giving Gunner the opportunity to take these shots will be crucial today against Austin Peay, because after this game, there are no more cupcakes on the schedule. You've got Tennessee looming. You've got Alabama looming. So we need to see more explosive pass attempts to know that Gunner even has that capability. So I would like to see it downfield a little bit more. I thought it was interesting that Kirby Smart was also asked the same question about how Gunner can improve earlier this week, but he looks to a different way that Gunner can progress today.
Next step is to continue to gain confidence in trusting his offensive line for play action, shot plays, 2 minutes before the half. I thought he did an excellent job of improvising when things weren't there or there was a breakdown. And that was probably the best thing he did was take care of the ball, protect the ball, and make plays with his legs. But he continues to get better. I mean, the next step is play with a little more confidence. And I think each time you start and play in games, you lose some of that anxiety.
Building confidence within himself and trusting his offensive line, Kirby Smart says. Now, one group that admittedly I wasn't super impressed with last week was the offensive line, and we'll actually talk to Connor Riley about that here coming up soon. But one of the things that I've had to remind myself of when it comes to the O-line in particular is that it features a lot of new faces, and even the faces that we are familiar with don't have a ton of consecutive starting experience outside of Monroe Freeling. But if Gunner can trust in the offensive line enough to take a few more seconds to look downfield before he takes off running, then that could be the difference in a short yard situation versus a potential explosive play. So today for Gunner, I think it's all about finding that balance between patience, but also not being afraid to take a risk for the sake of bettering the passing game. Here in just a few moments, we will hear from Jeff Sentell on his evaluation of Gunner Stockton in Game 1, as well as what freshmen could stand out today. But first, home games mean that we're here at the downtown Jittery Joe's location. It's already been pretty crowded this morning with people coming in to get their coffee, and I have to admit, I think the Jittery Joe's coffee that I had this morning actually saved me. As a lot of you guys know, I do high school football on Friday nights, and we were at Buford last night. Our game went into an hour and 10-minute weather delay. I didn't get home until super late, and so I knew that Jittery Joe's coffee I had this morning would save me. And Jittery Joe's is such a big part of our show and Georgia, and they're always geared up for the current season. You got the limited edition commemorative cans that you see here on our screen that you can order online at their website. It's been voted the best coffee shop in Athens for 14 years running. And if you haven't had the chance to try it, the best thing that you can do for yourself is download the Jittery Joe's app on your mobile device. That way you can receive half off your first drink and skip the line as well. And as we get into these big home games like Alabama and Ole Miss and Texas, it's going to be crazy busy in here, so it would be a good time to use that. And even if you're not in the Athens area, Jittery Joe's has tons of locations all around the state. I know I have one close to me in Brookhaven. So even if you're not in Athens, just put it into your maps, find the closest one to you, and make sure that you try a Jittery Joe's coffee, because believe me, it truly is special. Okay, so here in just a few minutes, we're going to take a look at what to expect from Austin Peay and hear from Connor Riley, who will be live from Sanford Stadium. But first, all things Gunner Stockton in the 2025 class with our DawgNation recruiting insider, Jeff Sentell. We welcome back Jeff Sentell, who gave us some insight on what to expect from Gunner Stockton last week. What did you make of his performance, and how can he progress in this second game against Austin Peay?
I think it's going to look, Kaylee, like quite a lot like it did on Saturday in his opener. You know what's funny? When I was watching him work, I kind of felt very Friday night-ish to me. Because really, if you look at the average Gunner Stockton football game, I think he averaged in high school 4.8 touchdowns per game, 1.8 rushing, 3.0 passing. So it really felt, obviously, it's a greater step in level, and it's 4 years later. But that's the way Gunner kind of always plays. He runs around, he makes plays with his legs, and then he throws it around as well. I do think Zachariah Branch is going to make Gunner Stockton's passing efficiency, QB ratings, yards per attempt. I love it that the great Terrence Edwards, I think, said on social media over a Zach Branch clip, is he said, that is a Mecole Hardman type burst. If Georgia can get a Mecole Hardman type burst or year out of Zach Branch, don't care who the quarterback is, they're going to look pretty good.
So we saw a total of 21 freshmen play last week. 2 got the start. 1 Gaston, who we kind of expected. But going back, looking through game notes, Ethan Barbour actually drew the start for Georgia, too. What do you make of that?
So it's interesting. I don't know whether this is Georgia and the Georgia staff and Kirby Smart just being Kirby Smart. Here's what I mean by that. I was down the field, and I was listening to the pregame introductions, and they introduced a lot of guys for starters. They introduced, like, Joseph Jonah-Ajonye on defense, and I was like, wow, I didn't know he's coming up like that. But I think they announce a lot of starters depending on the formation they'll start in, and then depending on what the other team breaks out, that's what you get. Here's why Ethan started, because Ethan is a smash mouth, ram man type blocker. And he's a guy that if they need push, they need a guy to clear holes. Ethan Barbour is going to be great at that. You know, everything else, you know, beating college level SEC DBs and safeties, that's going to come. But like right out of the box, Ethan Barbour is going to be a man, a mauler, a road grader. So he's just really physical. And you saw him leading the way on a lot of run fronts.
Yeah, between that and the Elias Williams touchdown that we saw at the end, I mean, what a day for freshman tight ends. Is that something that we're going to continue to see throughout the season, or is that just early game stuff?
I think most people love that. But they also said, well, what about Jaden Riddell? Can we get Jaden Riddell some highlights as well? And I think that's a good point. But what you're going to see, you know, Kirby makes no bones about it. They're going to play a lot of guys, and they're going to play a lot of freshmen because they know that that's how you kind of incentivize and reward players a little bit because, you know, everybody comes to Georgia to play in these big games. And Ethan is a guy that I thought was college ready coming out of high school, and he's going to look like a very capable SEC football player. And the news about Juan Gaston not expected to be back for Austin Peay, maybe a couple weeks after that. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting symmetry, Kaylee, because people forget before Juan Gaston got to Georgia and enrolled early and started turning heads left and right with his weight loss and his size and his ability, Daniel Calhoun was anointed to be the next right guard. And people were quite happy with Daniel Calhoun as the next right guard. A young man out of Walton, a lot of college football players in his family, very mature, very physical. And I think it just kind of shows Georgia's depth pieces right there when they could say, okay, this was the freshman we thought that was going to be all that for us in early this season. Now we'll just rotate to the guy we initially thought. I believe Daniel Calhoun is still a redshirt freshman as well. So, again, it's another piece right there where Georgia's like, yeah, we got a lot of options in the cupboard.
Earlier this week, we heard Kirby Smart say that the shutout didn't necessarily matter because it's all about getting freshman quality playing time. Who do you think are some freshmen that we could see stand out this week?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a little bit more Zayden Walker. I think you're going to – I noticed him – again, another true freshman coming in there. I got a kind of a guy right now though, Dominic Kelly.
Yeah, we saw him last week.
He got in some good clock ticks, some early run. Kaylee, every time I see him, he gets better. And people are going to forget this. It's my job and what I do for DawgNation to remind you. He was a reclass 2026. He should have been in high school football this year and not looking like he's going to be a quality corner for Georgia. Of course, there's a lot of other guys you want to see. You want to see a little bit more of Bo Walker, see him do a little bit more as well. You're going to see a little bit more Talon Taylor, I believe. I don't know if you noticed Talon Taylor was one of the gunners on special teams. That usually means you're maybe in the penthouse for Kirby Smart, not the doghouse for Kirby Smart when you're a young freshman who's noted for your skill guy acumen. And you're a guy that's getting to be a gunner and making tackles on special teams. That means you're doing a lot of things right.
And, of course, the reason that you know all of this is you're our DawgNation recruiting insider. In fact, if you want to know more about the guys who will be at Georgia in the future, Georgia's got a stacked 2026 class, so you can join myself and Jeff Santel for Before the Hedges every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. All right, so a few quick programming notes before we move on to the show. Thank you guys on YouTube for letting us know that there are some audio issues. We're working on it as we speak now. I appreciate you guys letting us know that. I'm seeing some comments about Penn State, and you guys reminded me to check the score. The fact that it's only 7-0 with 2 minutes left in the second quarter, I'm one of those people that I'm never going to put my faith or trust into a James Franklin Penn State team until they prove me wrong. I think the fact that they even debuted at number 2 in the country was kind of a disappointment. It's one of those things of disappointed but not surprised at the same time. And, of course, Jeff and I do the Before the Hedges recruiting show together every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. And one of the things that we do during the football season is we show highlight tape from the players in the 2026 class. We've done it for 2 weeks in a row, and some of these highlights have been incredible. And one of the people that I know we're going to talk about this Wednesday is somebody that I got the chance to see last night, and that was Ty Boogie Green, who is at Buford. He's going to play safety or star for Georgia, but he does everything for Buford. Jeff Santel told us last week that Jared Curtis had the best performance that he's ever seen from a Georgia commit in person. And I think that based on last night, that was the best individual performance I've seen with my own eyes from a Georgia commit. He had 3 touchdowns on the night, 1 pick six, 1 rushing touchdown, and 1 punt return. And if you guys have the chance to go look at it on social media, the punt return was absolutely insane. He kind of made it look like he was going to wait for the fair catch and then didn't. And he's in the midst of 6 defenders when he catches that ball and then kicks into a whole nother gear, goes straight to the end zone. He ended up being our MVP of the game. And so the future is bright for the class of 2026, and Ty Green is someone that Georgia can do a lot with. And so I know we'll touch on that next week, but I definitely wanted to give a huge shout out to Ty Green for his performance last night in Buford's win over Roswell. Okay, so now we're going to do some opponent preview and dig into what we know about Austin Peay. Yes, they are an FCS school, but this FCS school also defeated FBS school Middle Tennessee last week 34-14 as an 8.5-point underdog. I'm not really sure how much that success translates to today's game, but based on what they did last week, there are ways in which Georgia can capitalize on those things and improve as well. So we'll start with the offensive side of the ball with what they did. 193 passing yards to 2 touchdowns, no interceptions on the night, just 14 for 27. When carrying the ball, 150 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 47 carries, and 2 fumbles. They're led by quarterback Chris Parsons, who, like Gunnar Stockton, is a dual-threat quarterback. Last week, he had just 11 passing attempts and then also 11 rushing attempts, so we'll likely see him scramble today as well. And one thing to note about Chris Parsons is that he's a transfer from Mississippi State and even started a game as a Bulldog, and he's gone up against a Georgia defense before. He understands what that looks like. He's familiar with the SEC level of physicality and the speed of the game, so I expect the quarterback play to be a lot better today. But looking at the numbers, I mean, with 47 carries last week, this is clearly a rush-heavy offense, which will give Georgia, the Georgia defense, the opportunity to work on stopping the run, which is something that will come up later with my Kaylee's keys. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, Austin Peay put up some really impressive numbers. Only allowed 109 pass yards, 44 rushing yards. They had 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, and 7 pass deflections. I don't care what team you're playing. I don't care if you're playing Beaufort High School. I don't care if you're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. Only giving up 44 rushing yards is absolutely insane. And pictured here, I really want you to lean in and pay attention to this because I can't make this up. The player that you see on your screen here is their starting cornerback. His name is Ellis Jr. He led the team in tackles last week as well as pass breakups. And I actually learned this morning that he went to Ellis Middle School. So Ellis Jr., the quarterback, he went to Ellis Middle School. It's almost giving like a Key and Peele skit type of situation. And that was just some of the things that you do the research on the opponent and you come across something like this and you can't not share it. So I guess for Austin Peay, I'm definitely going to be watching for their quarterback, but I want to see what Ellis can do too. But on a more serious note, Kirby Smart also had high remarks this week for the Austin Peay defense. Here was his evaluation of their performance from last week.
Twitchy, quick, disruptive, keep you off balance. The defense coordinator was at Tennessee Tech last year. He does a great job. They have guys that run to the ball really well, disruptive inside. They understand their job and their gaps. It's not as simple as just walking out there and saying, okay, well, you got bigger and supposedly better players than these guys, just go run all over them. It's not that simple. These guys are disruptive in what they do. They're tied together. They play really hard. And I tell everybody, effort counts twice. If you play with great effort, it's worth double the value.
So as a defensive-minded coach, clearly there's a lot of respect for what Austin Peay did in the defense last week, which looking at the numbers was really surprising to me considering their head coach is really an offensive-minded guy, was the former offensive coordinator at Duke back in 2018. He actually won the Assistant Coach of the Year award. So to see what they did on defense last week, I don't care who the opponent was, it's really impressive, and the Dogs can definitely get better based on that today. And now, don't mistake this from me saying that Georgia isn't going to put up numbers against this defense, because at the end of the day, talent always prevails. But if Georgia doesn't come out today and score 50 points, it may not be because the offense lacked or because the Austin Peay defense looked elite. In fact, former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm gave us some insight into why there's a chance UGA may not show everything they've got today on the offense.
I would say when I was playing, that was probably more true than not. There would, be an idea of, hey, we're going to, hold our cards close and hold these great plays that we have and execute on them in certain situations where we need them in a big time game later down the road. The more that I've progressed in my football career and the more that I've seen more and more from college football, I think that is less and less true. I think there's plenty of great plays out there. My old OC in Detroit, Coach Ben Johnson, he's like, hey, there may never be another scenario to call this play. Hey, I'm going to go call this play, and then we'll just reload next week. So I think the more and more as the game progresses, especially with college football, the idea of just keeping your foot on the gas. Hey, man, just call the game and not worrying about trying to slow things down or not trying to show too much. I think there's a little bit in it. I think it's less than it used to be. And I think especially over college football as a whole.
So after today, the story is that the cupcakes are over. The trick becomes, how do you progress without showing everything you've got, especially with Alabama and Tennessee coming up? But based off what we know about the Austin Peay defense, UGA can look to improve in their run game against a team that had a great run defense last week and find ways to move forward while not presenting your entire playbook. Still to come, we're going to hear from Connor Riley, who's going to be live from Sanford Stadium. We'll also hear from Mike Griffith on the improvements that he wants to see, the players that I want to see step up, and then, of course, the Kroger Dawg Walk with Brandon Adams. But first, it's time for Smart Talk. The goal each week is to find the best pieces of sound from Kirby Smart that we think provide the best look inside the mind of a championship coach and his team. So let's get it going. This is Smart Talk.
This is a huge matchup.
Everybody doubted us.
Fire, passion, and energy.
Yeah, what an idiot.
Run the ball and play good defense.
You have to pick your poison.
And it's going to be physical. It's going to be tough.
I don't know what I'm allowed to say and not say.
You really get a look into Kirby Smart's DNA in a game where the result is hardly in doubt.
We talked a long time about process over results.
Because the real results are a slow burn. They aren't easy to see unless you know where to look.
Did they do the process right? Were their eyes in the right spot? Did they play with the correct leverage? Did they play the right technique? And there were a lot of those things we didn't do right. The results were fine, right? But they didn't do the process right, and we're really trying to hone in on not results. It doesn't matter how it came out. It matters, did you go about it the right way? And we didn't do that a lot at a lot of positions in terms of process.
So when a championship coach says, this is our secret sauce, don't always worry about the scoreboard.
I've never been into stats here. Like, we don't do that. We played more players when the game's in hand than probably anybody in the country. I think of those opportunities as development opportunities. It's why we've been really one of the better programs at turning players over in terms of what we put into the draft and lost early outs and having someone ready to go. I think that's number one, we develop and recruit. Number two, we practice our guys more as twos and threes. And number three, when they get an opportunity to go in the game, which we didn't last year, but in years past we put them in the game. If it costs us a shutout, then that's a great lesson learned. I'd much rather that kid cost me a shutout in that game than him cost me a touchdown a year later in an SEC game.
One person who has learned the SMART process isn't easy is five-star cornerback Ellis Robinson.
It's different. SEC ball is definitely different from high school. I'd say it took me a couple months to adjust to it, even from like practice aspects of it, really. So it was just really an adjustment for me overall, just coming here.
And if everything goes right, this will be the true results from Kirby's process.
When we play our best football, it'll look real dominant. It'll look real scary, and you will see a lot of energy coming from it. And I think if we keep that energy up, man, the sky's the limit for our defense.
And that's Smart Talk for week 2. All right. Two things to note from those clips. I loved the process over results. That was probably my favorite thing that we've heard from Kirby Smart this week, and it kind of ties back in with what we were talking about earlier with Georgia might not show everything that they have today. You may not see the result, but we know that the process is there. And then the question about how much does the shutout matter, I know at least for those of us on Go With The Flow that picked Georgia to cover, we were not particularly excited about that last touchdown, but according to Kirby Smart, it's crucial for those young guys to get quality playing time and quality reps, because you would rather them make the mistakes now than later on when the mistakes become more costly. So I feel like all of those really defined the essence of what Kirby Smart represents and preaches as a coach. And at the end of the day, that's the goal of Smart Talk. Now, I do think that we have Connor Riley. He is here live from Sanford Stadium. Connor, first of all, thank you for joining us. One of the big issues from last week that was talked about immediately after the game was the fan attendance, specifically regarding them leaving early. What does the atmosphere in Sanford look like right now?
Yeah, I think with the weather and the way that impacts this game, they've moved up the start time here. I think it's going to be hard on both sides to expect a packed-out fan environment. Students have begun arriving. I think the rest of the crowd obviously will slow to arrive, which makes sense given, the length and distances that some people travel to get here. And so I'll be interested now post-game day, because obviously I don't think anyone's expecting a fully packed-out house, what Kirby Smart has to say and what kind of leeway is granted to the fans today.
I want to use our time together to talk about the offensive line. You and I did it on our show Dawg Nation at Large a little bit last week. I do know now that Juan Gaston is not in a boot. Do we have a status update on him as well as Ernest Green?
Nothing official on either of those guys, but I'd be surprised if either one of them end up playing today. I think a lot of that is determined by the opponent, along with the fact that probably wants to develop some nice depth there at the right guard and right tackle positions. If they're playing Tennessee today, I think Ernest Green is probably playing for you. I still think Juan Gaston is a little bit more up in the air. Yes, he's out of a boot. Justin Tell captured some video of him walking in. No Scooter, which is an upgrade over where he was on Monday, but I still think, his status is something to watch for that Tennessee game. And with Gaston and Green out, look for Michael Weenie and Daniel Calhoun to rotate in at right guard, and Bo Hewley to get the majority of reps at right tackle.
And that video that you were referencing that Jeff Santel has of Juan Gaston not in the boot, we will see that later when our Kroger dog walk comes up. One thing that you and I talked about in particular was 2 batted passes at the line of scrimmage, 2 quarterback hits allowed, 6 pressures total. How do you want to see things look differently today in regards to the pass blocking?
Yeah, Kirby talked about communication there, and I do think some of the early issues were a little bit caused because of Juan Gaston, which is understandable given at his first college game, he's making an adjustment to the speed and physicality levels there. I'll be interested in seeing with the changes they have on the offensive line, how that communication works. Do they take a few more deep shots in this game? Or, especially because of the impending weather and maybe Georgia trying to get this game done and over with, to sort of run the ball, get in, get out, get up with a big early lead, and maybe run clock in the second half to get out of here before the thing gets delayed too much.
So one thing I wanted to mention was that earlier this week on DawgNation Daily, John Stinchcomb mentioned that he thought the offensive line looked good, but not great. And considering the opponent last week, that's not what you want to see. Is there any excuse for the offensive line to not be great today against an FCS opponent?
Yeah, I think with the injuries they're dealing with right now and the shuffling around that's probably going on, there's going to take some time for this group to come together. Georgia ran for 239 yards last week. That's the most they had run for since they game in the 2023 season. And you're seeing some positive things there. I think you like what you see at a Monroe Fielding. At left tackle, Drew Bobo, I thought did a good job at the center position. And so I think with this offensive line, if I'm looking at it again, 0 sacks this week and 200 yards rushing against an overmatched Austin Peay front. They're able to do that. Then we start getting into the nitty-gritty and picking details there in that regard. And I think that's still a successful day for this offensive line, especially given in the coming weeks they've got a good Tennessee front and supposedly a good Alabama front on their schedule.
Earlier in the show, we got to listen to Kirby Smart talk about the things that he wanted to see Gunner improve on in this second week, and he pointed to building confidence and trusting more in his offensive line. One of the things that I want to see from Gunner today is more explosive pass attempts, and with that comes more trust in the offensive line, even taking more than just 2 seconds to see what you have downfield as opposed to just assuming, okay, I need to go ahead and run the ball. So I would like to see the relationship between Gunner and the offensive line really shine through today.
Yeah, to that point, I think you want to see Gunner stand in the pocket and make plays. That was something we knew Carson Beck was going to do a season ago because of the way that he played the game. Whereas with Gunner, because of his legs, because of the fact that he's able to create there, I do think you saw sometimes last week he was a little jumpy to bail out of what was still probably a clean pocket. And so you want to see him stand in there, make throws, and push the ball downfield. I think it's clear with what we've seen from Gunner in his 2 starts against Notre Dame and last season and the Marshall game to open this year. They're going to want to get the ball out of his hands quick, especially 2 playmakers, and it helps him have guys like Zach Branch, Noah Thomas, Dylan Bell able to help in that regard. You've got to be able to push and find those guys downfield. And so, I look for someone like Colby Young today, who is a captain. I'm really interested in sort of seeing what Young looks like today as Georgia, I think, tries to at least show a little bit more vertically than they did last week against Marshall.
One of the things that we're going to talk about at the end of DawgNation Game Day, but I want to mention it to you as well, is We know that Gunner is really good on the ground, but I don't want him to be Georgia's leading rusher moving forward, especially considering the depth that they have in that running back room. You mentioned some of the receivers that you wanted to see stand out today. Who's the running back that you're looking to stand out today that's not Dwight Phillips Jr.?
I think you'd like to see a nice game from Nate Frazier, and I thought he played well last week, but you want to see him hit on those explosive runs, something we saw Dwight Phillips do last week, getting 60 yards on just his 5 carries. So, if Nate Frazier is going to get something like 10, 11, 12 carries, which is probably where I expect Georgia will want him to finish, you'd love to see him get into the 80s, 90s, maybe even the 100s, and break off a big run. I think that's the thing with Georgia and their running game, especially in these games against Austin Peay and Marshall, where they're overmatched. It's not just running for 4 or 5 yards a carry, it's can you break off those explosive runs and show a different dynamic to the rushing offense.
Okay, Connor, any final thoughts about today's game?
Yeah, I think with the weather, it is something to watch. With Georgia getting in, getting out, and getting out of here with a victory before anything gets delayed, Georgia can quickly move on to prepping for Tennessee next week.
All right, Connor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kaylee.
All right, guys, still to come, we're going to hear from Mike Griffith. We're going to hear from Cody Chaffins. We're going to talk about some of those players that I want to see stepped up. But first, this is DawgNation Game Day. We will be back in 60 seconds.
Nothing makes a house feel more like a home than quality windows. So trust the professionals at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. We'll equip your home with energy-efficient windows and doors just right for you. Schedule your free in-home, no-pressure consultation. Get product samples, installation options, and a free quote. Log on to PellaGA.com and visit our new Experience Center in Duluth. Tell them Brandon Adams sent you. Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Viewed to be the best.
Hey, Dawg Nation. I'm Brandon Adams. If you love what Kaylee Mansell does here in our DawgNation GameDay pregame show, and I know you do, you'll also love our DawgNation postgame show. After every UGA home game, we're live at the UGA bookstore. And after every game, we're also available to you on the DawgNation video channels. We have video highlights, live calls, plenty of post-game reaction. Hopefully, talking about big Georgia wins each and every Saturday. The place to be after the game is on the DawgNation postgame show. We'll see you there after today's game.
This is DawgNation Game Day, brought to you by Pella Windows and Doors, Kroger, R.S. Andrews, and Jittery Joe's Coffee.
And welcome back to DawgNation Game Day. In case you're just now joining us, because we usually start 2 hours before kickoff, the game has been moved to 2:30 due to weather concerns. So we've had a tap dance here a little bit on DawgNation Game Day. Looking at some of the comments on YouTube, I saw a lot of people talking about, I guess it was a stereotypical Karen that snatched a ball from a kid last night. And you know what? It was terrible, but that might be the best thing that's ever happened to that kid, because I saw where he did get a signed bat. Supposedly they're going to send him to the World Series. It's just one of those moments that feels too good to be true, because, and I don't like to stereotype women, but that is what you think of when you see classic Karen. And so after I got home from the game last night at Buford, because I really didn't get to be on my phone, had no signal there. It's one of those things on the internet that just kind of like takes you by surprise, and you see how it unites the world. So obviously people are still talking about it this morning, and I wanted to address it because it was very entertaining to go back last night and look at some of those tweets. We had Mike Griffith earlier this week. I thought that him and Cody Chaffins did a really good job in their On the Beat show Monday nights at 7 of breaking down where Georgia can show improvement in game 2. But luckily Mike broke it down in 2 minutes for me. So this is Inside the Mind of Mike Griffith.
Well, Kirby Smart made it clear that it is a process, and that's what he wants Georgia focused on as they move forward into the 2025 season. Austin Peay, a team that last week beat Middle Tennessee State. Yes, they're FCS, but they have a pulse. They can offer some challenges. Kirby Smart talked about their pass rush and some things they do up front. My focus is going to be on the back end. And if Gunnar Stockton can exploit the secondary of Austin Peay with some passes downfield. Now, last week, we saw Marshall play a lot of cover 3. There wasn't a lot open downfield. But Mike Bobo did dial up some plays, and there were some receivers running open. Gunner's got to find these guys and trust these guys and let loose of the football. This is why you went out and got Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. This is why C.J. Wiley signed. These big targets can make these plays, and I think it's important for Gunnar Stockton to make these completions downfield, show that he can stretch the field vertically to make Georgia as effective as possible on offense. Now, Kirby Smart mentioned it. Not a lot of fans hung around the second half of the Georgia-Marshall game, and it was getting out of hand. But I think Georgia's got a responsibility to show you something in the second half. You know, the last time they played Austin Peay, it was 38-0 at halftime, and the final score was 45-0. So just as Kirby wants to get some experience for his defensive players playing the Georgia defense, I think when Ryan Puglisi goes in the game, that you got to turn this guy loose. You got to get him experience too. And that means putting the ball downfield, because that's what Ryan Puglisi does. So the second thing that I really want to see from Georgia in this football game is for Kirby Smart to put the hammer down. There's a college football playoff selection committee that's going to look at this final score. And I'm not saying that there's much difference between 40-0 and 56-0, but from the standpoint of developing your players and giving the crowd something to cheer for in the second half instead of just bleeding the clock. Yes, I know they need to work on the running game, but right now I would say the passing game and these receivers need to have a lot of work. So those are the two primary things that I want to see on the field from Georgia.
I think Mike makes a couple of good points there. Now, I do think that circumstances change with how the weather is going to affect today's game. I think Connor was spot on that we're going to see a lot more of the run game, trying to get that clock moving just so that they can finish the game. But in regards to the fans, you bought the ticket. You have every single right to leave if you want to. But we got to keep in mind who the opponent is, and when you get into these big home games that Georgia's going to have very soon, I don't think that's going to be an issue anymore. But I want to thank Mike Griffith for joining us earlier this week to give us his opinion on what to expect from today. Now, one of the people that he mentioned was Noah Thomas, which is a good transition to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is the players that I want to see step up and emerge today. And for me, it starts with Noah Thomas, because Noah Thomas was one of the most hyped up players that Georgia got from the transfer portal. Standout wide receiver at Texas A&M. He's got that 6'5" frame. He can go up and get those 50-50 balls, which is what Georgia was really lacking last year. But whenever you look at his stats from last week, not all of it is on him, because he did only have one target, but finishes the day with no catches, no touchdowns, only played 12 snaps. And here's the thing. This is the first time that Noah Thomas has not had a reception in a game since 2023. At this point, I thought we would see them try to take more shots to Noah Thomas, and maybe it goes back to this idea of, okay, we're not going to show everything that we've got. And now between him and Colby Young, two guys that play a very similar role, I could see that a little bit more, and why the game one was maybe not as exceptional as we hoped for Noah Thomas. But I just want to see him get his opportunity, more than one target. Now, the target, could he have really gotten that ball? I'm not so sure, but I just want to see them make more use of him, because we know from what we heard in practice and what we heard from fall camp that Noah Thomas is a really special player, and I just want to see them make more attempts to get Noah Thomas the ball today so that we can be confirmed and validated in all of the things that we heard about him this offseason. Now, Kirby Smart spoke about Noah Thomas and his progression at SEC Media Days over the summer. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, he went through spring, and it was a learning progression for him, learning a new offense. We got a very NFL-style offense in terms of our terminology. It's very similar to what Coach Muckin used when he was here, and then Mike and James and Hartley and all the coaches on our staff have implemented other things and ideas. But the verbiage was important for him to learn. He worked extremely hard. He is a guy that's now starting to show his personality, and you get a little more leadership out of him day in and day out. He's got tremendous size. He's a great kid from a great family, and we've embraced him. We don't have a roster where there's an influx of 30 and 40 new guys from the portal. It's a very small community, so we're very inclusive. We welcome those guys, and I think he's been pleasantly surprised with how well he gets to know his teammates and how well they know each other.
Even though this doesn't pertain specifically to his skill set, I still think there's a lot that we can take away from what Kirby said there, because typically when Kirby Smart is asked about an individual player, he tends to pivot and talk about the group as a whole, but he took this moment to acknowledge the progression that Noah Thomas made as a personality on the team and just being adapted and adjusted into that offense. And so I feel like if we can see Noah Thomas get more targets today, some of that confidence builds within yourself, and maybe us as Dawg Nation will start to see some of that personality come out. So maybe it doesn't happen today, but I'd like to see them take some shots at Noah Thomas. The next one, Connor touched on this as well. It's Nate Frazier. I didn't think that Nate Frazier played bad, but the thing that concerns me is when we look back at Nate Frazier's stats from last week. He had 11 carries for 47 yards, no touchdowns on the day. That doesn't concern me because Gunnar Stockton carried that load. It's the 4.3 yards per carry, with just the longest rush being 12 yards. If Georgia wants to continue to improve its run game and not get in as many long, third and long situations like they did last year, Nate Frazier is going to have to make more explosive runs. Hopefully we're going to see that today, but he is the clear RB1 for this group. I'm not sure how far along the guys behind him are, even though there's a lot of depth. There's certainly no one in this room that's as talented as Nate, and I don't feel like that came through in the numbers. If he's only going to have 11 carries, then one of those is going to have to reflect in the stats that he is this explosive playmaker that we saw him to be last year. So maybe the carries don't go up today, but I would like to see the average yard per carry go up. So when they go and face Tennessee next week, we know that there's not going to be as many third and long situations as there was last season. The last person I want to talk about is on the defensive side of the ball, one of the clear leaders on this team, and it's Christian Miller. And it goes back to what I said about Nate. I didn't think that Christian Miller necessarily had a bad performance, but I thought we would hear more noise from Christian Miller in last week's game. When you look back at the stats, he did play 17 snaps, had 2 quarterback hurries, but 0 tackles made in the game. And so as someone who's considered to be the leader of this defensive line, has the most experience on the defensive line, I thought that we would see that reflect a little bit more in the numbers. But then I heard Christian Miller speak to Jeff Sentell last week, and Christian Miller just does Christian Miller things. So I'm going to let you hear from him on how he wants to progress throughout the course of the season.
Honestly, really just focusing on how to get better. I think that's the main thing, just realizing, like, my head is not big. I'm trying to stay level-headed each week. So it's things where I'm kind of nicking at my game every week, trying to see how can I get better in my game, because if I just keep doing that, by the end of the season, I'm just going to keep on rising. And the main thing is I just want my linebackers to play free. That's the biggest thing. I want another Butkus Award winner.
He wants to see a Butkus Award winner. That personality that we get from Christian Miller, every time I hear him speak in an interview, I'm always impressed by how eloquent he is and just his outgoing personality. And that's probably the reason that we'll never see him in another Georgia press conference. But, I mean, he's looking at this as a long-term thing, wanting to let other guys on the defensive line have some experience. But I think that the front seven today's got a really good chance to step up from last week, because this is such a run-heavy Austin Peay team. So, you know, Christian Miller had a fine performance. I want to see him maybe get a sack or a tackle for loss or do something that really jumps off the page and establishes him as the most talented guy in this defensive line room, where he is the most experienced player. All right, so talked to Cody Chaffins earlier this week. We did an extended version of something he does on his On the Beat show, which is Boots on the Ground. Of course, Cody does all of our video on game days, and he's really good at capturing those moments that you can't see on TV, or even if you look away for just a moment, you might miss it. So here's Cody Chaffins with Boots on the Ground. Anyway, welcome back, Cody Chaffins, to the DawgNation GameDay show for an extended version of something you already do on the beat. It's called Boots on the Ground, where you show some of the behind-the-scenes things that fans may have missed. So we're going to do that this season. We'll take a look at the first one here.
All right, so get to be on the sidelines of all these games and show you some of the stuff maybe you didn't catch on the broadcast. First one are the Gunners on the punt team. It was a question, Kirby Smart, very first practice we went out, he said, we got to replace 2 of the best Gunners in the country. What are we going to do? Arian Smith, Dom Lovett are gone. So naturally, we wondered who the Gunners would be. Kaylee asked Kirby right before that Marshall game who it would be. We found out right here, at least two of them that looked like they were in there very early. 11 is freshman Talon Taylor, 5-star freshman. You also had number 4, KJ Bolden, in on the tackle. But the thing significant to me, KJ Bolden's a defensive guy. Like, he's going to get in there and mix it up. We expect him to be down there. But for a true freshman to be a Gunner is really, really impressive there, especially the 5-star freshman wide receiver. It tells you a couple things. A, he's not afraid to get in there and mix it up. One of the things I wondered about Talon Taylor coming into this, he's played up in Illinois. Did he play against Georgia high school football players? How tough can he be? Well, he's proved he's tough right there as he slams a man down. You also want a wide receiver who's not a prima donna, right? I want to get in there and get on the field. It was a thing always with Kirby Smart teams. You want to get on the field, you better learn to block. You want to get on the field right now, you better learn to play special teams. So I loved seeing that number 11 out there.
Yeah, and we saw a few different rotations of Gunners, but to know that Talon was out there, I think that the Gunners on the team are a sign that Kirby Smart sees something in you. Was really surprised to see it from Talon Taylor, but in watching his high school tape, what impressed me about him was his yards after catch. We know he can kick it into a second gear when it comes to that speed, so I love knowing that money is not just sitting on the sidelines, and we may not see Talon contribute as a wide receiver all the time just because he's so young and that room is so stacked, but knowing that they found a role from him, which clearly he made a big impact on that play. The player was actually a little bit mad at how good he did it because he kind of like pushed off a little bit, so I love to see that from Talon Taylor. Now, with that, we'll go ahead and take a look at the second boots on the ground.
Yeah, this one is, for a lot of reasons, the fans have been in the spotlight this week. Kirby Smart would not comment officially about how fans kind of scattered there in the second half. That's not my issue. My issue here, you watch the fans. Now, this isn't Krypton fanfare into the third quarter and fourth quarter, right? No, they're not just shaking those pom-poms. They were doing the tomahawk chop. I got issue with this. So they're, as you would do, they're putting up the Alabama FSU game, and we see that FSU is ahead of Alabama. Fine. You can give a little cheer. We are not going to do the tomahawk chop, a celebration or a cheer for a whole nother college football team. This caught me off guard. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah, this concerns me just a little bit. I understand this is big, especially, being at this game. You may not be able to check your phone, see the scores that's going on. So obviously Georgia's going to put that up there because it was a huge thing that happened in week 1. But knowing that Alabama is coming in a couple of weeks, it doesn't make me feel any better that they lost in week 1. To see the fans do that, that's bulletin board material to me.
And it's not like it's little brother, which Georgia Tech obviously played Georgia close last year, but they feel like little brother, right? Like you cheer for the person that's going to beat little brother. Like Alabama's not your little brother yet. Until you start dominating Alabama, you can't talk smack. I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And like FSU is like a legit team Georgia may play.
Yeah.
And you don't do their cheer. Like if you went somewhere and somebody else was calling the Dogs, it would be strange.
I would like to see that energy saved for the actual game against Alabama.
And leaving in the end of the fourth quarter, if you're a fan, at that point, it's hot for everybody. I'm not blaming anybody for getting out of there. These are paid athletes. They don't need your support. They got the money. They're doing just fine.
All right, and now we'll go ahead and take a look at the last boots on the ground.
All right, the other thing I get a chance to do is shoot pregame video. So this was happening right as you were going off the air on the Game Day show last week, as we saw Roderick Robinson kind of working out. So I was suspicious. I said, I don't know if we're going to see old Rod today because he was kind of getting looked at pregame. Kirby Smart later this week has now told us it was a hamstring, and then he was pretty close. You could see right here, he is very close to have been able to go. It's just one of those things. And week 1 against Marshall, you're not going to push it. Georgia's got plenty of running backs at this point. So there is a look at Roderick Robinson. You're not going to see that most other places, how he looks running the football. So he was close to getting in there. Georgia could have used him. I would love to see Roderick Robinson get healthy, stay healthy. You got a lot of these 3rd and 3 and less situations that Georgia just failed on in week 1. Boy, it'd be nice to have a big body like Rod Robinson in there to run it, but that's what he looked like pregame last week.
I would love to see him get some reps in this game too, but it also wouldn't surprise me if we don't, considering the opponent that you're facing. Do you take the risk of maybe getting him in there that way he can have some playing time, or do you save it because you don't want to do that against this opponent and think to yourself, man, I shouldn't have done that.
No, I want him next week when we go to Neyland Stadium, the DawgNation invasion on the Tennessee River. And he showed last year he can hit the ground running. Came in first playing time was the Georgia Tech game. Boy, he had a pretty good game that day. So I would save him up. We're not going to push things with any of these injuries this week. Even if he does play a touch or two or go through warm-ups, feel all of that, like get kind of that game day feel, and then sit them all down.
Well, Cody, thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to see more of the boots on the ground with the behind-the-scenes footage, you can tune into On the Beat, which takes place Monday at 7. Cody will have new ones from this game with Austin Peay. So tune in Monday nights for On the Beat with Mike Griffith and Cody Chaffins. All right, one thing that Cody Chaffins also helps with is our Kroger Dog Walk, along with Brandon Adams. We'll go ahead and take a look at the Dog Walk and get a glimpse at the dogs for Week 2.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into Kroger's coverage of the Dog Walk. I am Brandon Adams. It's game time versus Austin Peay. Moved up by an hour. That means Georgia coming in a little earlier than expected. Let's take a look at the dogs right now as they make their way into Sanford Stadium. I can tell you that as you see Monroe Freeling getting ready to make his way in, Lawson Lucky's over there once again, looking good in the double-breasted suit here once again. Dalen Everett coming by. That's also a guy we have our eye on today. As will he play, will he not? You're going to see Oscar Delp walking in here. Georgia making their way. Quarterback Hezekiah Millender, one of the backup quarterbacks for UGA, walking in here right now. I can tell you, as you see Georgia file through, a couple of players have also made their way in prior to today's Dog Walk. One of those, Brett Thorson, punter we did not see last week. Another of those, as tight ends coach Todd Hartley going to come by, another of those is also Juan Gaston. So if you want to consider the possibility that Gaston today will miss today's game, the fact that he did come in prior to the Dog Walk would certainly be a strong indication of that. Over on the far side for me, you're going to see defensive lineman Christian Miller decked out in black, working the rope line and giving high fives to everybody as he comes by. Chris Jones is here, looking great once again for the second time in a row, wearing the three-piece suit with the vest. A different suit than last week, though. Looking very sharp on that. Wide receivers coach James Coley coming by. Of course, his receivers expect to be a big part of the offense here today. Georgia continuing to roll through, continuing to file in. Offensive coordinator Mike Bobo over there on the far side, wearing the Georgia cap here today. Getting ready for Austin Peay. Weather expected to roll in later. That's why, as Michael Weenie comes by, that's why game time gets moved up. Get a chance to see Ryan Puglisi coming through here. Obviously, Georgia fans enjoyed getting a chance to see him in action last week, hoping for their chance to do that again today. Defensive coordinator Glenn Schumann going to come by here right now. How about Ellis Robinson and the look on Robinson here? Big chain, window pane style black jacket with the checker print. Georgia coming in here looking sharp today. Getting ready for action against Austin Peay. Game time moved up to 2:30 p.m. from 3:30. So that means Georgia arrives here a little earlier than it sometimes does. So that's the scene here. Slowly but surely, Georgia making its way in. And, of course, all of our Dog Walk coverage is brought to you by Kroger. So as you're enjoying your game day here today, enjoy all of the food and the fixins and the beverages, anything you need, tailgate, watch party, whatever else. Our folks at Kroger have you covered on all of that. And you can become a Kroger Boost member today. Take advantage of the convenience of free delivery, free pickup, and also twice the fuel points on the things you're already buying at your local Kroger. Georgia's slowly making its way in here, Kaylee Mansell. So with that, we'll send it back to you for our DawgNation GameDay pregame show.
So in case you missed it on DawgNation at Large last week, we've actually broke out the video on our DawgNation YouTube page. Brandon Adams came to me and Connor Riley and Cody Chaffins with an idea of how he can better himself for the Dog Walk. I know you guys were talking about in the comments that maybe he missed some names. It's kind of hard to tell who these players are when they don't have their helmets on or their numbers on their jersey. So we went through a few of the guys that he missed from last week, told him who they were, and one of the guys that appeared was Chris Jones, who's an inside linebacker, redshirt freshman. Brandon did not miss him today, so clearly he learned. He can pass that in the accountability check, but if you haven't watched it, I would highly encourage you to do so. We called it Name That Dog, and it was absolutely hilarious. So congratulations to Brandon for an improvement from week 1 to week 2 in the dog walk. All right, so now as we begin to wrap up, it is time for my keys to the game. This is Kaylee's Keys. All right, so we've got a repeat offender this week, which is going to be, I think, a key to start the game is a fast start, but it's an entirely different reason than it was last week. I think last week I just wanted to see Georgia do it to know that they have that capability, but now we know that they can do it. I would like to see that again, just so you get more snaps for Ryan Puglisi in the second half, as well as for the true freshmen. Now that we're getting into the SEC schedule, as much time as you can get for Ryan Puglisi, I think is really critical as we move into these tougher games. And with the freshmen, there was just so many flashes of exciting plays with Elias Williams and Dominic Kelly. I would like to see that extended on today, and that way we can see what true freshmen we're actually going to see as the season progresses. And when you get that fast start, you take that early lead, that leads to more aggressive play calling. It ties back into what we said we wanted to see from Gunnar Stockton, which was a better pass game, more pass attempts for explosive play calling. So when you don't have to play conservatively, you don't have to play it safe. You can have some of those aggressive play calls, and then just getting that fast start up early, you can take some of those starters out and further prevent injury, because you want a healthy team as they head to Neyland Stadium next week. So I want to see a fast start again, but just for entirely different reasons. We know that they're capable of it, but give the backup some time to get in today, because everything is happening so quickly as they go to Tennessee and Alabama comes to town. So let's get a fast start, get your starters out, but also a little bit of wiggle room for Gunnar Stockton to take some shots downfield. Now, the other one is perfect because it ties back into something that we've heard Kirby Smart preach a lot about, which is I want to see them run the ball today and stop the run. And now before we break down why this is important, I want you to listen to what Kirby Smart had to say about this earlier this year.
Our best team since we've been here, they've been able to run the ball when they have to run it, and they've been able to stop the run when they have to stop it. And that looks different in every game. So what do I want to see out of those guys? I want to see improvement. I want to see buy-in. It's a culture thing. You know, it's like you get what you demand, and we're going to demand that we stop it and that we're able to do it and run it.
All right, and so with the defense that they're going to go up against today, we mentioned earlier Austin Peay only gave up 44 rushing yards, so it gives the running backs opportunity to really improve on what we saw last week. I really want to see a lot more from the running back twos. I know I said I wanted Nate Frazier to step up in this game, but also let's see what Bo Walker can do. Let's see what Chauncey Bowens can do. Let's get more time in for Josh McCray. That way you know a little bit more about the room that you have moving forward. And against a defense that only gave up that many yards last week, again, I don't care about the opponent. I think that that is a good way to showcase some of the improvements that we know Kirby Smart has been working with in the offseason. And it's just like more sustainable for SEC play, because when it ties back to Gunnar, we don't want him to be the leading rusher, because him scrambling on the ground as much as he did last week, not super sustainable going into SEC play. I think that's why the Jackson Arnold performance against Baylor, it was impressive, but you can't continue to do that with a real Southeastern Conference schedule. So I think today going up against this defense, that's where the running backs can really shine. And then on the defensive side of the ball, considering that Austin Peay had 47 carries, and with the weather today, it looks like they're probably going to run the ball a lot. And with that, you can create more turnovers and sacks for the defense, which is something that I wish we would have saw more of. It's a great test for the front seven and the linebackers to show the talent that we know that they have. And, of course, that forces offensive adjustments on the side for Austin Peay. So these two things that Kirby Smart has harped on, Mike Bobo has harped on, Glenn Schumann has harped on all season long. This is a good game for us to see them not only run the ball well, but also stop the run. Okay, so part of a tradition here on DawgNation Game Day is our wonderful Cody Chaffins, who is just a do-it-all guy. He makes an incredible video every week to get you hyped for Game 2. So this is our DawgNation hype video for Austin Peay.
You know, running out as a starter is a lot different than hoping you'll get in, you know.
And he's been preparing to, like he's a starting quarterback for 4 years. So there's no one I trust more than Gunner.
Proud of Gunner. Great leader, great competitor. He cares about everyone, his teammates. He treats everyone the same. He leads. He's passionate about it.
I think just being out there, being in the huddle with all the guys on the sidelines and enjoying the moment and just chasing good memories.
I think you saw it on some of those runs, how bad he wants it and how bad he competes.
Having fun out there, you know. Heck, we're playing football, you know. It's supposed to be fun.
He is who he is. He doesn't try to put up a fake facade. He's just a worker.
I mean, wow. I couldn't think of a better way to begin this game with something all about Gunner Stockton, who last week impressed a lot of people with what he could do on the ground. And just his overall persona of who he is so different than what we've seen in the past with Georgia quarterbacks. And it's clear there's a mutual respect between him and his players. And even the way that Kirby Smart speaks about him, you can tell that there's a lot of confidence from him in what Gunner brings to the table. I'm excited to see how he expands on that today. I'm just excited that we have the opportunity to learn more about this Georgia football team. Now, I think we're certainly going to learn a lot more next week when they go to Tennessee, but they can continue to build on the foundation that they established last week. We can continue to see different players emerge and stars on the rise. I would love to see more from Zachariah Branch today. I know that you guys were talking about him in the comments, and wow, just knowing that every single time he catches the ball, there's an opportunity that he can score. There's a chance that he has to make a massive play. Like, that just makes me excited for what we're going to see today. Hopefully we'll see some new guys emerge, but just knowing that we have another opportunity to get to watch the Dogs play today, even with the game time moved up. I'm excited to see what they showcase today in this game too, and that way when it's all said and done, we finally have a big one next week. So Dawg Nation, I want to thank you for joining us here on DawgNation Game Day. Make sure you check out the DawgNation post-game show with Brandon Adams immediately after the game, or if you're in Athens, you can stop by the Georgia bookstore and see us there. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you right back here next week for the DawgNation Game Day on the Tennessee River. Can't wait to see you then.